2020 서울 혁신주간 이틀째 일정을 시작하겠습니다.
Good morning, everybody.
두
I
번째
am
날의 시작을 맡게
here
된
to open the second day of the 2020 Seoul Innovation Week event. I am Park Yeon-hee, the director of the Korea office of eClay.
서울 혁신주간 전환 컨퍼런스에서는
Today we're having the transition conference of the 2020 Seoul Innovation Week, and we're here to talk about how communities and corporates envision transition and also the challenges and efforts of global city governments and citizens.
우리가 마주한 느닷없는 이 코로나
We're facing the COVID-19 pandemic situation right now. And in this difficult time, we're talking about transition and how to realize transition to overcome these difficulties. We have many questions and we want to find the answers to that. And that's going to be the discussions for today. Today we're going to have the Transition Conference Session 2. And this is going to be about circular economy in regions as a solution to overcoming the pandemic. So today, we're going to listen to projects in various regions and communities to hear about the values of transition and sharing and how they expanded and grew these values. And so these examples and case stories, success stories, we're going to listen to and discuss about. We have speakers from Korea and abroad. 3 speakers will be giving presentations in this session. And so in order, we're going to listen to those presentations. And then after that, we'll have a panel discussion with 2 designated panelists. And one of the speakers will participate as well. And we'll have a discussion session like that. So let me introduce the speakers in order. The first presenter that will give the first presentation is an overseas example, actually. Totnes in the UK has been introduced in Korea quite oftenly. And so we're talking here about Totnes, not economy there, but re-economy, the Totnes Re-economy project. And so this person, the speaker that we're going to introduce, is the co-founder and coordinator of the Totnes Re-economy project, Jay Tomt. And Mr. Tomt will be talking about how re-economy sparked citizen-led economic transition in Totnes and beyond. So within Totnes, it was successful and it's now expanding out to other regions, and we'll like to hear about that. So let's go to his presentation.
Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of Seoul Innovation Week. I hope you've had a good morning so far. My name is Jay Tomt, and I'm the coordinator and one of the co-founding members of the Totnes Re-economy project, and I'm also a lecturer on the postgraduate regenerative economics program at Schumacher College. So this morning, I'm going to make my little contribution on this panel. It's going to be about the Re-economy project, how we got started, and how the work that we've begun and our approach has spread into the surrounding region and beyond. So how Re-economy sparked citizen-led economic transition in Totnes and beyond. Well, we started 10 years ago, but already 10 years ago, we were quite aware of climate change and all of the negative impacts that are caused by the kind of economic system that we have. So the loss of biodiversity and acidification of oceans, the diminishing democratic institutions around the world, the rising corporate power, the rising inequality, and so on. All of these issues really are a result of the kind of economic system that we have. And so a group of us got together in Totnes and said, okay, well, what can we do about it? There's not much we can do about the global situation from our small town. So what can we do to make changes in our small town that can model a different way of doing economics, a different way of meeting our needs, and at the same time provide opportunity for young people? So we were quite aware of concepts around sustainable business and circular economy and so on. So how could we begin making changes? Where were those entrepreneurs going to come from who were going to start these kinds of businesses? How were we going to be able to shift the behavior and so on? These were questions that we had. We didn't quite know the answer, but we knew that if we started doing something, then things would happen and it would become clear. So, as I said, we started in 2011, and we knew that what we were trying to do, or at least the aspiration, was to lead change from the citizenry, from the community, and so a real kind of bottom-up process. What were we shooting for? Well, the kind of economic system that we all have in mind is one that's fair and inclusive, one that's ecologically wise, and leads to a thriving social life, social reality, convivial, with cohesion and people caring for one another, neighborliness, that kind of thing. And importantly, this kind of economic system, it has to be resilient and adaptive. So this is what we had in mind as a goal and as an aspiration. We also wanted to work in a systemic way. So we could have said, well, let's start a cooperative. Let's start a business ourselves and try to lead change that way. But rather we said, how can we change the system such that we can create the conditions for all kinds of new economic actors and relationships and models to emerge and flourish? After all, innovation is a big part of this. In fact, the IPCC report came out a couple of years ago that said we had to reduce our carbon emissions by 45% over the next decade. There's never been a greater innovation challenge. And I'm not just talking about technology. I'm talking about innovation in the way that we meet our needs generally. And so that also implies cultural shift. So, what could we do? Well, the way we've tried to answer that question has been informed by systems thinking, informed by some of the insights that come out of complexity science, and also by an understanding of network theory and how to work within networks and the role that networks play in driving social and economic innovation and change. So locally, what can we do? Well, we can try to catalyze a transition-oriented entrepreneurial culture. Where do entrepreneurs come from? It's a cultural construct, the kind of entrepreneurs that we have now, like Mark Zuckerberg. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. What kind of entrepreneurs do we need now in this moment? And what are the other roles that can be played in an entrepreneurial process? How can we begin to catalyze that kind of cultural change? Through stories, through events, and other things. So this is one big area of work for us. Secondly, how can we mobilize the local financial and social capital that's already in our place? What do we have to work with? There's a lot. So we've also had an eye on that and how we can make some changes there. And all of this leads to the idea of building out what I like to call enterprising ecosystems. But if any of you are interested in entrepreneurship and innovation, probably you are already familiar with the concept of an entrepreneurial ecosystem And there's a lot of academic work around describing what this is, but essentially we're talking about the kinds of spaces, structures, institutions, and so on, that together are in a productive relationship and that together help to make visible the pathways for entrepreneurship, the pathways for innovation and good things to happen. So this is what we're trying to do also in our little town. And finally, our approach includes weaving diverse networks, convergence networks, as I like to call them. So trying to create opportunities to bring lots of diverse people together in various ways. So we've been working with these in mind, and one of the big projects that we run every year is something we call the Local Entrepreneur Forum. Probably many of you are familiar with these kinds of things. We do it a little bit differently. So typically these events are full-day events. We invite everybody that we can think of in the town who's an entrepreneur or a potential investor or an interested person, a possible supporter, into the Civic Hall. We generally get about 130 or so people. We include some facilitated networking so that people can get to know one another, break the ice. And we also do something we call open space technology, or unconference. So this is a way of self-organizing breakout sessions so that everyone gets a chance to meet who they need to meet, learn what they need to learn, and so on. So that's what you see in this image here, is a number of different sessions going on. People learning about, for example, how to talk to entrepreneurs, how to talk to investors, or who else is interested in doing a community-owned laundry service, or what have you. Runs the range. And what this does is creates an opportunity for participation. It creates some confidence, and of course there are real tangible outcomes too. Then we generally have a shared meal. This helps to continue the relationship building. And then we move into pitching. So we call this part the community of dragons. We generally have 3 or 4 entrepreneurs pitch, and the dragons respond. And they respond with all kinds of investments. So here we see Eric, who's starting up a mushroom farm, and here's what's her name? Myrtle, who's starting up a wild food business. And so they might have asked for some investment money, help with the business plan, and so on. And the people respond, I'll loan you £1,000, or I'll give you £100, or I'll give you £10 if somebody else gives you £10, or help you with your business plan or your website or whatever. Real tangible kinds of things, but also intangible things. I love what you're doing. I'll bake you a cake. Come to my house for lunch. I'll give you a hug just because I think what you're doing is awesome. So all of these things are very important for building relationships and creating that kind of cultural shift. And we call all of these things investments. So this also helps to create a new kind of narrative. It's been very successful for us. We've had 35 entrepreneurs come through, different projects of various kinds. A technology company, a couple of farms, a brewery. All in all, about 35. We've raised over £100,000 investment money and so on. And one of the things that has emerged is all of these companies have networked together and become related to one another. So this network diagram shows some of that relationship, and things emerge from this network that we had not anticipated. So this also contributes to that cultural shift, and it's been very interesting to see how this has been developing. We also have the Reconomy Center. So I know that we've had many visitors from Korea who've come to the Reconomy Center. It's a place to work. It's a co-working space. It's also an incubation space. We run workshops there and skill shares, and it's been a great asset to the community, especially now during lockdown. Here's some visitors from Korea, in fact, standing outside the Economy Center. Just gives you a glimpse of what it looks like on the inside. I mentioned that part of our approach is weaving networks, so this has been a really important part of how we've been working and how we've spread what we've been doing in our approach to the region. So we began by having conversations, as you do, trying to meet people outside of Totnes in the surrounding area who are also interested in making change, and we met some. We then had this idea of doing sort of a network building, movement building event that we called the Devon Convergence. And the way we got this started is we gathered together these people we'd been having conversations with, and we had a session that includes some dragon dreaming. So just as a way to sort of envision the project and what we were shooting for. This led to collaborations, and we ended up running 4 of these Devon Convergence events over 4 years. And this has led to all kinds of things coming from it, including a bank and a new bank project and some other projects around the region. It led to lots more participation. It also led to some self-organizing and self-aligning among the various projects that were beginning to pop up or who were already working in the region. So I mentioned it led to a bank. So the very first Devon Convergence led to the entrepreneurial project of starting up a bank. And now, if you know anything about the financial system here in Britain, you know it's very centralized. We have an oligopolistic banking system dominated by national and international banks. We don't have regional banks. We don't have municipal banks. This will be the first regional bank. It'll be cooperatively owned. It's called the Southwest Mutual. You can see the logo there on the left of this slide. It also led to the start of Local Spark. So this is another citizen-led project in a nearby city, and a few other projects. So it's become a catalyst for an informal network that has included, it's drawn in more activists, more change makers, more entrepreneurs, and led to all kinds of other collaborations. It's also drawn in people from local authorities, local government, and that has been also very important, especially in this last couple of years. So this year has been really transformative. We have had many of the local governments declare climate emergencies, and then we have had this COVID pandemic. There's also the Brexit process that's happening here, and all of this is pointing to the need for economic change. First, because of the climate, but second, because of this economic calamity that we're facing. Well, luckily, we've been building these networks. We ran an event in July online called the Regenerate Devon Summit. We had over 635 people attend. 70 were from local governments and agencies. This is unprecedented for this area. The theme of the event was all about regenerative economics and building back better, Green New Deal, that kind of thing. We had a session on the donut economics, and what it led to over the last couple of months has been amazing. So we've got lots of new initiatives starting up on the ground, and we've got new relationships with local government, new opportunities for partnership, especially around how to work in a networked way, in a collaborative way that leads to change from the bottom up that can meet the change that's coming from the top. So it's very exciting times in our region right now. One of the other things that has occurred over the last few years is we've developed an international network. We have a network of very loose network, I should say, of about 430 something people from about 25 or 30 different countries around the world. Very, very early days. We've done a couple of little events online, and we're going to do a translocal entrepreneur forum November 26th. So this will be testing some ideas about how we can build solidarity internationally and create opportunities to spread the innovations that are working from one place to the next. So we'll see how that goes. What have we learned? Well, we've learned that participatory methods, convergences like the events that we've done in Devon are very productive. They're very good for activating people and for unlocking possibilities, and especially for sharing know-how. Sharing know-how is super important for working in this networked, self-organizing way. And what we found is that it's possible. It's possible to create very light touch networks where people have a lot of autonomy and can self-organize and self-align. All of this is informed by systems and complexity science, and there's a growing amount of literature talking about that in the context of creating change and social innovation on the ground. And we've learned also that this kind of thing works. So we've seen lots of innovations pop up through our networks. And we think this is part of the package for the kind of rapid transition to a new economic paradigm that we need in these days. So thank you very much. If you'd like to learn more, you can find out more about our local project and our international network by following these links. And you can also communicate with me directly via email or my Twitter account. So thank you very much, and I'll see you for the panel discussion.
예, 고맙습니다. 이 토트네스의 사례는 이제 여러 곳곳에서 조금 회자되기도 하지만
Yes, Totteness is talked about in various parts around the world. Whenever I hear about Totteness, I feel warmth, and it gives courage to people, I think. So thank you very much to that presentation. But if you listen to the presentation, it's a trial. It's an effort that is really changing the fundamental existing system. And so in this field, people who are thinking of transition, I think it gave a lot of inspiration. Thank you very much for this presentation. People who want this kind of inspiration and more discussion around this, in the YouTube channel, you can leave questions or comments, and we will reflect that as much possible in the panel discussion session. Okay, now let's move on to the second presentation.
Yes, the second presentation will be from Korea. So I am curious as to how much you know about Seoul Metropolitan Government's efforts toward a circular economy. I understand that there are significant achievements. So in this next presentation, we'll hear about Seoul's legacy and challenges for the local circular economy. Now we have an activist who has been helping social enterprises, especially those led by young people. So our speaker is the chairman of this organization called Seeds. So our speaker is here on site, and please bear with us. She will be speaking with her mask on due to the COVID situation.
네, 반갑습니다.
Yes, very nice to meet you.
소개받은 이은혜고요.
My name is
시즈
Lee.
이사장이자 서울
I am the chairman of Seeds
위원으로서
and also a member of the Seoul Democracy Council. And for 7 years, I also worked as the head of the social enterprise support center. And so in that context, I want to talk about Seoul metropolitan government's legacy as a city in terms of seeking to become a circular economy. People are saying that we're likely to see more rounds of infections, and many people are saying that a key cause of the situation is climate change. Korea and Seoul is counted as one of the villains in terms of climate change. And also inequality has become much worse after the pandemic has broken out. The Korean government, of course, has made a declaration to become a decarbonized society by 2050. But actually, with the pandemic and also the lockdown, I think many societies and countries saw their weakest link. The citizens who were most vulnerable actually were the hardest hit from the COVID outbreak. And Korea was no exception. There was great discrepancy and gaps between the large companies versus persons working in the smaller companies. Many defranchised workers were left out, and they suffered greatly due to the COVID crisis, as many lost their jobs or saw a decrease in income. We may have managed to do well in terms of disease prevention and control, but a lot of people, the vulnerable, are suffering from the corona blues, those who suffer from lack of housing or income, and with many of them losing jobs, a lot of people are becoming more isolated and suffering from depression. So you see that there is greater demand for community-based care and health prevention services as well. Now, for public safety and health control purposes, a lot of public services, for example, the soup kitchens, have been shut down. And so many people are going hungry. They're having to subsist on junk food or instant food. And the large companies actually had big inventory of ready-to-eat instant foods produced using cheap ingredients that they imported from abroad. A lot of them marketed these products at low prices, but it was mostly to clear inventory. It led to a lot of malnutrition. And so I think we have low levels of social capital in the process of growing our economy very quickly. I think we're not able to build up a tight network of social capital. Many people do not have others or public agencies to turn to in times of trouble. So Korea and Seoul, of course, we were successful in terms of managing the disease better than other countries or cities, but still we do continue to have to make efforts to build up further social capital. Due to COVID-19, many people, according to the survey, said that they had no family or acquaintances to turn to when faced with trouble from COVID. And so I think we now realize what kind of universal challenges must be addressed. Many countries are talking about the Green New Deal to deal with climate change and then also the economic fallout from COVID-19. And Korea is also doing the same in the sector of food. There's a food Green New Deal program, which actually was lacking. But over 5 years, 70 trillion won will be invested toward funding the new Green Deal package that was recently announced. So it's the public sector that is stepping up. And I think that it will become a very important policy medium and platform going forward. For the millennial generation, the Green New Deal actually was an achievement. It was a policy agenda that the activists actually won through great struggle. And according to research, thanks to the Green New Deal, many positive effects are expected. But what's unfortunate is that the Korean government's Green New Deal program, there's no mention of the social economy. And why? What is lacking? I think we have to look back on what we're missing. And I think that will be very key to achieving a circular economy that is based on the community. So the social economy this dimension over the last 30 years or so has grown and has drawn a lot of attention. And so there were some drivers. So there's a lot of inequality and imbalance, especially in terms of the workforce. There was youth unemployment or displaced workers. So there was a lot of need to create new social jobs and new policies to address these gaps. That's why these types of labor or integrated jobs were created, and that was one driver behind the social economy. After the IMF crisis here in Korea, we have faced aging of population, low fertility rates, a rapid increase in the suicide rates, the number of one-person households, for example. So amid this demographic change, a lot of the home chores, taking care of children, for example, that used to take place in the home, well, there was now increased demand for these services outside of the house, outside of the home. But as per capita GDP grew, the spending propensity or the purchasing power of the citizens also grew. And so in terms of building up these types of services, a lot of social enterprises emerged. Now there are more than 20,000 social enterprises employing 100,000 or more people that are providing services to address these unmet needs. They've become a major player in terms of the economy. For women, there was the glass ceiling issue, the issue of finding new jobs for North Korean defectors or for the youth. And then many people in their 40s or 50s were actually forced into early retirement. So there was a great deal of need for jobs for these people. That was another driver behind the emergence of social economy. And many regions actually saw a decrease in population as there was more concentration toward the capital region. And so there were many policies derived to address this type of population decrease, and a lot of social enterprises were actually set up in the non-capital region. So it's about building up the commons. In Seoul, for the last 7 or 8 years, social economic organizations, in terms of quantity, have grown by about 5 times. So that is a great achievement, and there's more citizen engagement. But then, in terms of the amount of funding or the transition to job justice, this type of commons-based framework, I think we're still very much lagging. I think 70% of the social enterprises actually have said that they are at great risk and suffering from the COVID-19 situation, similar to the Soho small business entrepreneurs that are not within the social economy dimension. So the need to build up this underlying platform to provide a firmer safety net and basis, build out this commons of mutual support was identified as something that we have to work on. Now, we need to support the youth by providing subsidies, communities and villages. So these are the circles represent the different types of civic movements. So more are on the traditional side, others are more novel. And one key challenge for us, we're somewhere in the middle. It's about bringing together the different parts to find sort of a hybrid model. Now, before the 2010 global financial crisis, it was about survival. There was strengthening of the role of the public sector to recover from the economic crisis. But within the pandemic, the new normal mandate is to find a more environmentally friendly, more ethical transition to our economy. So the underlying essence of what social economy and social enterprises are about, I think, is being highlighted didn't better appreciate in terms of importance. In order to create the new normal economy, what is very important is that we really have to respond to the start of full-fledged zero-sum economy. The Korean type New Deal, or the Digital New Deal or the Green New Deal, could actually be misleading. It could be used as a tool to build up the second round of digital startups, for example. So we have to make sure that within the low growth environment, we have to look to other indicators, not just measures of GDP growth, but happiness index or other indicators that measure the government's policy effect. Also have to look at the trickle-down effect, how effective a policy is in delivering the multiplier impact, for example. Other indicators have to be considered more importantly so that we can really benefit from the so-called New Deal and not be left out. So I think these are some considerations for the new normal economy. In that sense, I would like to propose a concept of the community-based circular economy. So the circular economy, well, it's a bit of an extension of this concept. So it's about community-based circular economy, being focused on the essential services and products required by the community members. It's about building up that kind of entire life cycle, returning the profits and gains back into the community for this type of circular structure. In the excessive era of excessive over-competition, over-protection, we have to now think about regeneration or recycling of resources as a key basis for our economy. In our concept, it's not just about regeneration, recycling of materials only, but the value add, the people, and other non-material concepts also have to be regenerated and recycled. And the community, I think, has been well trained over the past 10 years. They're ready to really absorb this kind of concept. Now, a set of policy measures to support this kind of transition by the government is required. There has to be adjustment of existing policies and then new policies as well, so that the youth or the vulnerable are not left out, so that they can be included and engaged in the various economic activities within the community-based circular economy. So basic wage and other types of basic income also have to be expanded as an enabler. And how to expand the citizen comments should also be the center of any government policy. And so these are the suggestions that we make to Seoul metropolitan government. The Green New Deal actually, there's a great deal of alignment between the Green New Deal and the community-based circular economy that we suggest. If you look at the components, for example, our social economy, it's about the essentials. The essential product should be at the center, not things that certain people may prefer or non-essentials. And then using adequate technology, there can be help in terms of transition to job justice, for example. So in pursuing the Green New Deal, already Seoul metropolitan government declared the Seoul-specific Green New Deal, but I would suggest that it be more bottom-up. There should be more engagement with the people in terms of establishing and implementing the policies. So social economy can help in terms of green remodeling, food, care, recycling. So there are certain areas that should be subject to selective concentration in the implementation, and it's aligned with a lot of the goals of the Green New Deal.
공유 주방, 공유 세탁실, 공유
Now, it's
주차장.
about sharing, shared parking space, shared laundromats.
미국의 클리블랜드에서
We see these examples elsewhere in Cleveland.
공기업들이
These
이런
big public agencies and hospitals work together.
들여다보시기 바랍니다.
So I think these types of overseas case studies can be great reference to us. The social economy,
만드는데 함께 나서면 어떨까 제안드립니다.
we're suggesting that
주체들과 함께 하고 있습니다.
we take part in building up the green health care cluster first.
연대 또는 도시농업과
We can achieve food justice
거리에
and provide a safe
그리고 친환경
and stable supply of food by linking up with the farming households and enhance safety of the foods. And it's a fully integrated process up to the end-of-life waste treatment process as well. So maybe we can make a community-based social franchise that provides this type of circular green health and food care services.
그리고 시민들이 활용하는
And then the citizens
위해서 필요한
can get very
상의 건강 센터를 만들어낼 수 있습니다.
well. We can also build up a health center that can provide on and offline consultation to the citizens.
서울을 삥 둘러싼 경기도 안에
And then within the Gyeonggi province,
산업단지를 끼고 있는
there are phase 3 new cities
가까이 고양시
that are being designed to be self-sustainable. For Changning, for example, 38,000 homes will be provided, and 35% will be in the form of public housing.
산적 경제
So maybe
30분의 일자리에서
they can be test beds, for example.
이용하고
In the area, we can provide green jobs that are within 30 minutes distance from the citizens that live in the public housing. So linking up public housing policies with green social enterprise jobs.
시민 참여
These types of experimentations can be done, especially in the newly set up new city initiatives around the parameter of the Gyeonggi province capital area.
정책, 규제 정책을 통해서 더 실행력을
These are the
계속해야 되겠고요.
things that we would like to suggest. There's a role for the public sector and also the market and also the civic society. So, for example, market can provide different technologies, technology transfers. But all three sectors have to work together and collaborate. So it's about contributing and pooling together. The third sector, the citizen civic groups, have to focus on building up enterprise social enterprises in the essential product and service areas first. And also, we have to innovate the role of what's called the prosumer, the pro-consumer. And we have to transition from individual or private ownership to public shared ownership and to community-based public commons. And this can in turn contribute to achieving economic democracy. And under that vision, I hope that all three principles and stakeholders work together in this transition to a community-based circular economy. Okay, thank you very much. The social economic dimension started off with great ambitions. So you have covered some of the achievements of the last 10 years, opportunities and challenges. But I think overall, I was impressed by the sense of self-confidence that we can actually do more, and appreciated little bits and pieces of your vision. And I think it was very thought-provoking as I was thinking of what details must be put in place to help achieve your broader vision. So thank you very much for the input, and we'll move on to the third presentation then.
Now let's talk about a town. In the local community, what efforts for transition are being made? We're going to talk about that. In Korea, you know Eunpyeong-gu, but we're going to talk about that case, Eunpyeong. So transition town Eunpyeong will be introduced in this presentation. It's basically people who protect the earth, transition City Eunpyeong. So,
안녕하세요. 전환마을 은평의 활동가 소란이라고
with you.
합니다.
Yes,
반갑습니다.
hello. My name is Soran, and I'm an activist at Transition Town Eunpyeong.
에너지 정점을 극복하기
A
위해
transition town. Let me explain what it is. Basically,
스스로 바꾸고
in the age of climate emergency, it's a community-led action to
사실 굉장히
build a system
운동입니다.
where we can tackle environmental challenges and build a better system.
전환마을이 전 세계에서 생겼습니다.
From 2005, we saw transition villages build up. Now we see that there's a lot of villages around the world in 50 countries, over 10,000 that say that they want to be a transition town. But in Korea, we started this movement in 2013, and the first ever transition town is our town, Transition Town Eunpyeong.
선언했다.
And
그리고 전 세계
a
전환
lot of people say that we proclaimed
마을을 선언했다. 이렇게 말씀드립니다.
transition town, that we proclaimed it, but that's correct. Transition town is something that we proclaim. It's not that somebody labels you or makes you, but you proclaim it yourself. The 10,000 villages around 50 countries, that's what they did. They proclaimed it and they started. That's what you do.
나라마다
So in every country, every town, it's all different how you do this transition movement, and the way that you lead this movement is also very different.
서울처럼 이렇게
In Seoul, we have a very big city, and
공동체로서 마을
as a local community, do we have a real local community in Seoul, in our big city? But you might not know, but basically transition towns, you don't have to see it in a big concept. It's just people who have the same interest in saving the earth. They come together and they build their own living community. That's what a transition town is.
에너지 전환이나
It's about energy transition, a technology trying to treat climate change.
그런
That's not the basic theme of a transition town. What it is basically I change. If I change my behavior, then I can help save the earth. That is what transition town is. Of course, energy efficiency and so forth is very important. Without that, how can we address and tackle climate change?
마을은
But we can do it in the community, in the village.
이루어지는 곳입니다.
There's a lot of relationships built in the local community. Within our local community, when we get connected with other people, build relationships, then that actually can help address the climate change, climate emergency issue. That's what I like to say. It doesn't need something big.
이 세상
Right now, it's survival of the fittest. That's what we're learned to do.
공유하고
But
함께 소통하는
in a transition town, it's about sharing. The community building together and sharing together, not thinking about yourself only. Let's say in our home, we all have a refrigerator, right? But no, that's not it. We have a kitchen garden in our town, and we can just get the vegetables commonly from that kitchen garden. Or we don't, right now everybody has their own dryer and washer, refrigerators and appliances, but no. In a community, you only have one area where everybody does their wash. Then you can reduce energy, you can reduce waste and so forth, and you can build relationships. So it's about living together in a community. So in this climate emergency, we reduced energy usage, and
우리 모두가 더 많은 관계를 만들고 더
basically it's about building relationships and connecting with one another and doing things together, not individually. So transition town,
소비를 넘어서
it's
많은 것들을 스스로
beyond consumption. It's about making, producing together. It's about a community that makes together.
임금 노동을 통해서 소비를
In the city, we work for wages and we consume goods and services. But actually, in a city, you can also produce a lot of things as well. In your garden, you can make some kind of vegetable and share it with your neighbor. Or another person can make a different kind of vegetable in their garden and share it. So it's just 1% producing for each individual, but by sharing, we're sharing for all. And we're basically being self-sufficient as a community. So this 1% stimulation, it actually creates more. That's the kind of space a transition town is. Let's look at Eunpyeong. We have 밥풀꽃. This is a local food restaurant that we have in Eunpyeong. In an urban environment, having a local food restaurant is kind of strange. You might think, why is that? It's kind of strange to be in the middle of an urban area. But 밥풀꽃 takes the organic, eco-friendly food ingredients ingredients and makes their menus with that. And so this also connected with a lot of farmers in the area. If you go to Bapulkot, this red pepper powder, for instance, who made it? The kimchi, where did it come from? Who was the person that made it? You can see their names, you can imagine their faces. So if you look at a meal at Bapulkot, you can see how the love and affection has been put into the food.
우리가 동네 식당에서
When we go to a restaurant in the neighborhood and eat at a place like this, it's a small little behavior change, but actually you're helping out all the related farmers in the area, and you're giving jobs to the young people in the area as well. Let's say a multinational company or a big franchise, we go, it's not that. Let's say if we just consume 15% of the local community's business, then the local economy is vitalized and more investment and jobs come in. So in this era of climate emergency and crisis, there's a lot of things that we can do, just small things to change it, like energy issues.
것들이 더 많은 위기로 몰릴 수가 있는데요.
And there's a lot of
그때 우리는
big things in the centralized system that we have to change, of course, to tackle climate change.
것이 굉장히 위험한
But
공간이 될 수 있습니다.
the urban
그렇기 때문에
environment in itself is a threat. So what do we have to do in the urban cities?
세계를 만드는 것이
Well, making our own self-sufficient production system is very important to tackle climate change.
물질을 통해서 먹거리를
We produce ourselves, we consume ourselves, and share, and
건강하고 안전하게
not make things expendable. That's how we can make our community healthy and also address climate change.
약 4%도 되지
Farmers in Korea are only 4% of the total population, but we cannot just rely on farmers alone for our food. Even 1% in the city, yourselves in your kitchen gardens,
대도시 지역은
you have to produce. And especially in Seoul, which is an ecological void, we have to a little bit produce ourselves and self-supply ourselves.
기후 위기 시대에 대비
Transition city Eunpyeong,
지역 생산
the sharing production, sharing consumption, and we make our own energy as well. We do all these activities and we're trying to be self-sufficient within our own local community. It's not a civic group that we're doing here, but it's about doing it yourself, experiencing and taking care of yourself as a community. We are a education or a learning network, that's what we say. Because in climate change is the first time everyone's experiencing right now for the first time this emergency. So there's a lot of trials and errors. We do certain things, and if it's wrong, we fix it and go another route. So trials and errors are natural, and that's what we do. When we first started to make Jeonnan Maul, Eunpyeong, transition town Eunpyeong that is, we don't have money, we don't know about the environment issues that much, we don't know what to do. Am I eligible to make this? Am I fit?
마을에서
But
어떻게 하기에는
those questions that we started out with,
생각도 했습니다.
and we also thought maybe it's already progressed too much. We can't change the climate course, and it was very difficult for us. We're in despair a little bit. And we don't have land. We don't know who to work with. You know, there's a lot of difficulties when we start. But the crisis is an opportunity, and the questions can become answers. So
목요일에 청년들이
every Thursday, the youth got together and started to just clean up waste, you know, the litter. They cleaned it up.
쓰레기를 주우니까
And because we were picking up litter in groups, some people thought that we were panhandlers, you know, beggars on the street.
만들고
But
먹거리도 심어서 동네 곳곳
and then we started to do other activities. We started to make our own gardens and started to produce our own food and produce and shared it with other people. And then we started to imagine more and more what we can do. So without anything from the bare ground, with our bare hands, we just started.
하고 있습니다.
And now we're doing a lot. We're making our own food with our own gardens, and we're producing together. This is a dill plant, a dill flower. The direction is radial. There's no up and down. There's no hierarchy here, the way it blooms and flourishes. This is our organization chart. We don't have any ranks or hierarchy. We just have people that live in a community together.
마을에 이것을 설명할 때
So when I introduced Eunpyeong Town and the concept, it was very difficult to explain this kind of concept because we have big meetings, but we break it up into small meetings, small groups where people can get together.
치여서
And so
번아웃되거나
somebody might get burned out. Well, that's less for us, you see. We get these small happinesses in the activities that we do. So in our transition town, there's a lot of different small groups, small activities that people do together as activities, and this is all to save the earth. So in our transition town, we bring all these together, and these little things will help change the earth and save the earth. So that's why the deal flower, the deal plant, is kind of like a symbol for us. It's the way we work. They're in a radial fashion. What you want to do, when you want to do, just do as much as you can. That's basically what we ask for. That kind of participation in our local community. So the climate emergency and the wrongs of capitalism, we try to correct that. That's basically why we started, right? So there's a lot of different schools in our town, but one is like picking weeds. This is a weed school where we go and pick weeds. You might think we don't have shared resources, but in Seoul, there is weeds everywhere. So when we go to the supermarket, we go to the weeds and we pick these weeds, actually the grass. There's a lot of things you can actually do that. You can pick those, make cosmetics with it, you can make foods with it, and you can produce things with it. So we've actually made it. Like, we picked all the weeds. We know the weeds and the nutrients they are. It's a very good ecological resource. And now we are using these weeds that we pick to make livelihood goods, living goods like lotions or stuff like that, cosmetics. And this is what we call this the bulk local community movement, the bulk goods movement. And that's what we're doing. We make these products ourselves with the weeds that we pick. And we throw away plastics by the month so much, and we use a lot of chemicals. But using these weeds, we can make the goods that people need for their lives without emitting that hazardous chemicals or materials. It's a healthy way of lifestyle. It's a healthy lifestyle, and it's eco-friendly. So if we go to churches or worship or other places of worship, we can share this with people. We started to make these supplies, and for each household, the 300 containers of plastic throwing away has been reduced for each household after using this. And so one of the most representative activities we do is agriculture. We make our own vegetables and fruits, right? So in Transition Town, we produce together, we share all of that we make together. And so in 2020, there was a lot of different things that happened. We have the corona pandemic and other things as well. But in the earth, actually, when we till the land, tillage actually creates carbon emissions. But in permaculture, you can take that carbon and sink it back into the earth. We can do that. There's a way to do that, permaculture. So by doing this permaculture activity, we can actually reduce carbon emissions from tillage by 1/3, and that's what we're doing. Basically, we let the soil rest before you use it again. And also, the best way to build carbon sinks is to plant trees. So that's what we did. We made a field in the city with a lot of trees, like a kind of a forest field. Erica Chenoweth says this: in a society, 3.5% of people can create change for the entire society. So if a group of 3.5% of people of the population think of something and persuade people and strongly voice their concerns, this can change 50% of the society and eventually the whole society. This was what happened with the civil rights movement in America. Also, women's voting rights were achieved through this. 3.5% of people started it to change the whole society. That's what we want to do with Transition Town. There's a few people that understand the challenges and the problem. Just 3.5% if we can change the whole behavior of society. So it's very slow, the process, of course, and tackling climate change and changing that, we don't see it with our eyes, right? But the fastest way I like to say is to do this kind of transition movement. If you want to save the earth from climate challenges, sometimes it seems too big. We can't do it on our own. You get depressed. You get pessimistic about it, but you don't have to be, because transition movements and transition towns, it's not too late. If we just make this be behavioral change, slowly you'll understand that you are really contributing greatly to saving the earth. As we go to a carbon neutral society and we try to get away from climate challenges and climate emergency, basically we have to degrowth ourselves. We have to stop growth, or degrowth ourselves, that is. So it's not survival of the fittest, but we have to build communities where the members look after each other. That's the kind of change that we need. So we need to protect the earth. Not everybody, but I am the earth myself. I have to think I am the earth and look after myself that way. So we have to let down our greed a little bit. That's what we need the most, degrowth and letting down our greed a little bit. Overseas, there's a lot of transition towns as well, and there's Korea. Many of the transition town managers come to Korea. They go to many villages and towns around the world, but it's not a sub-tier district of the government. It's not that. It's sometimes there's countries where you don't have a living space, then you cannot make a transition town. If a town is just somewhere where you sleep, it's a bed city. If it's just about real estate, then you don't have a living environment. You don't have a living atmosphere. If you want to save the earth from climate change, you have to change yourself. You have to change your thought, the whole process. So now you come down elegantly and choose to live the right way. You have to choose that life. You have to choose your living environment. Make a place where people can live. That's how we can save the earth from climate change. And so now is the time to act. Only your transition, only your thought change can change the world. Thank you very much.
네, 고맙습니다.
So thank you very much for that. We talked about that, at the pinnacle of growth, at the height of the growth, we have to step down elegantly to save the earth. That's the message. How did you receive that? Thank you very much for that. Now we're going to call all three speakers, and there's panelists that we've invited. We're going to call them to the stage for a panel discussion.
자, 이제 시작해도 될까요? 예, 반갑습니다. 그리고
So thank you very much, and great to meet everyone. So here on site we have Ms. Iune and Yoo Hee-jung with me on stage, and then we have invited as a discussant Mr. Choi Seung-guk from Now N, a research co-op, and then we're joined online by our speaker first, of whom is Mr. J. Tom from the Re-Economy Project, TONES. So thank you, Mr. Tom, for joining us online. And we also have another online discussant. We have Professor Kim Hyung-mi from Sangju University of Wonju City. So thank you for joining us.
그래서 우리가 토론하는 방식은
So in terms of the housekeeping, we do have a lot of questions posted online, but we'll first hear from our two designated discussants first, and then we will go through the collected questions all together. And then the three speakers can pick from those questions any one that you would like to answer. So I give you that choice and ask you to answer the question that you like. And then if there are any further follow-on questions, we'll also have follow-on discussions as well. Okay, so we will first hear from our discussant, Professor Kim Hyung-mi. I know that there is so much that everybody wants to talk about, but obviously we're talking about transition, and we have a history of about 10 years of the local governments taking the lead in actual on-the-ground initiatives. And then I think there's more consensus among the Korean and also other countries and cities. We're more receptive and there's greater need. So the key word is, how can we do this, the transition, better? So maybe if we prepare this way, or maybe if we live up to the challenge this way, or work with such and such partner, maybe it would work out better. So I'd like to hear your suggestions, more or less along those lines, just in terms of the efficiency of our discussions. So Professor Kim, please go ahead.
안녕하세요.
Oh, yes, good morning. I am from Wonju, Sangji
상지대학교를
University. I am
가르치고 있습니다.
teaching social economy classes.
저는 사실 이제 서울에서
Um,
오랫동안
so
서울
I
시민으로
used to live for many years as a
살다가
citizen of Seoul, but then
됐습니다.
I moved and relocated to Gangwon Province as of this year.
오자마자 이제 코로나
So
사태를 맞이했고요.
right after I moved, there was the COVID-19 outbreak.
이곳저곳을 많이 다녀본 것은
And
아닌데
so I didn't get the chance to really see much of Gangwon Province yet, but
제 문제
still, I think I had
떠나서 강원도라고 하는 그런 이제 지역
I was finding myself in a new context, a new setting
강원도의 특징은
that I had to explore.
기본적으로
Now, Gangwon Province,
중심 거점 도시가 크게 여러분들이 잘 아시는 원주,
well, there's Wonju, Chuncheon, and Gangneung. Those are the three major cities in Gangwon Province.
제외한 15개의
And then, other than these three, the other 15 cities or districts actually are seeing a decrease or a net outflow of population. And so people are saying that they may actually become extinct with nobody living there. And then there's a lot of farming households in Gangwon Province.
예를 들면 이제 뭐 전환
So if you're talking about transition or a community-based circular economy in this kind of province,
님께서 말씀을 하셨던 여러
we heard of many ideas, having your own garden, producing your own food, and then becoming self-sustainable, for example. Those types of activities are quite natural. They're already being done in a lot of the farming households already.
예를 들면
And so the young people, maybe they don't have jobs,
지금 농촌 사회에서
and so maybe,
청년이
but
직업이 없어서
in the farming areas, it's the opposite. The young people are in great demand, and they are in short supply. So if there's a young adult that moves over, then everybody is seeking that person out because they can help out on the farm. So there's a lot of imbalance
봤을 때는
here and there. But on balance, if you look at the entirety of Korea,
뻔했나요?
oh, sorry about that.
국토 전체적으로 봤을 때는 이처럼 이제 서울과
Between Seoul and
지역과
other provincial regions,
사이에서의 상당한
there's a lot of imbalance and gaps.
이 지역 순환 경제를
And so I think
가로막고 있는
that's one obstacle blocking the implementation of the circular economy.
저희가
So given the circumstances,
예를 들면 이제 강원도의 맥락에서 이 지역
in the context of Gangwon Province, for example, in order for the concept of a circular economy to work well, I was thinking what kind of efforts would be required? Well, first,
지역에서는
since there's a consistent outflow of people,
인구가 많은 도시와의 연대
I think solidarity or linkages to cities that are actually seeing a net increase in inflow is required.
이걸 해볼 수가
So,
있어요.
for example,
농촌 사회에서는
say on the farm,
전체 지역 사회가 그 지역에
the collective community
있는 기초적인 서비스 기능 자체가
can provide basic services
유지되기가 힘든데요.
to the villagers, but it's not sustainable. For example, Ms. Yoon-hae
하지 않았는데
did not mention, but it was in one of her slides
생활상의 건강을 지키기 위해서 열병
about how
운동장
some training grounds or a field, at least 10평, 1평 being 3.3 square meters, should be provided to the villagers.
주변을 산책하는
So, a place to work out, just to take a walk, for example.
가능하지만
In the city,
사회에서는 어렵습니다.
it's possible, but then
캄캄하고
less possible in the farming areas, surprisingly, because it's so dark. There are no street lights. it can be unsafe, for example. And then the playing grounds of the schools, maybe, off access. So some things that can be done easily in a city actually is more difficult in an agricultural community. So I think linkages with a city where there's a population increase is required. So we're seeing extreme aging of our population, also outflow. So maybe we can be matched up with a city that is in the opposite position. So one thing that I was surprised after moving to Gangwon province was this is not very well known, but social enterprises. I found that they were actually playing a very big role within the community, much more so than I thought. For example, in Chuncheon, there's a Starlight Living Co-op. In 2008, there was such a big decrease in the local population that a lot of the schools were closed down. And so it was a village in crisis. So the villagers, they came together and established this co-op. And then the elementary school teacher, well, they operated a mountainside training center. So that there could be, a constant pool of teachers ready and available to lead in the classroom. And so the co-op also provide other forms of services. And recently, they also launched the Starlight Co-op 119 emergency line. So a lot of people are living alone. Maybe if they fall sick or if they have something that needs fixing in their home, but they don't have anybody to help out, and they can contact this hotline. And so then somebody from the co-op will be dispatched immediately. So it's about really mutual aid, mutual cooperation, and mutual care. So that's one case study. And the fact that they have been, in order for these types of activities to be sustained, we have to make sure that, for example, the teacher training, the mountainside training center should be supported. So maybe in Seoul, maybe some citizens or groups from Seoul can link up with the teaching center, for example, and build up some kind of a collective transition village. So that's one thing that I thought about. And then there's another village called Haedam village. Sometime 2015 or so. So they represented the Gangwon province in a nationwide contest. Now, more than 50 of the households among the 60 making up the community actually were engaged in some form of social enterprise activity. A lot of them were aged, 65 or above, but actually they're working very hard. They learn carpentry. They're working as rafting guides during the summertime. During the winter, they developed special a mushroom-based meat replacement specialty product, for example, for marketing. So they are producing for themselves. They are able to generate income by selling their self-produced goods. And in order for this to be really circular,
인구가 굉장히 많은 도시와의
I think
연결이 매우 중요하다고
they also will have to be linked up
제가
with
여기서
another
오늘 드리는
city.
말씀은 핵심적으로
So my key point would be that to build a community-based circular economy and a transition community or transition village,
여러 지역에서
in order for us to see more of these crop up across Korea and for them to be successful,
스스로 알아서
I
자급자족
think it's not enough to ask for each of the individual villages to work on their own and be just self-contained, self-sustained on their own. I think we have to establish linkages and link up those individual villages so that they can work together. So thank you. So this conference is hosted here in Seoul, and we're very urban-based. So maybe we may have lost some perspective about the non-urban space, the provincial areas. So thank you for that insight. Okay, and maybe we can hear comments from the other speakers on your suggestions later on. We'll move on.
So the second discussant, Mr. Choi Sung-guk from Research Institute Now and. So I am at the Research Institute Now and also for solar energy. I work in that field as well. Thank you very much for the three of presentations. It was very nice. I don't think I have to comment on each one of them. It was all very insightful. I just want to talk about some comments that I have. We're talking about circular economy today, and the basic theme is how can we change our linear economy into a circular economy and build our society in that fashion. That's what we're talking about. Circular economy is not working right now because rural and urban areas are separated and consumption and production is separated. So we have all these materials that are not circulating properly. That's why we have to make that circulation of materials and resources. And so there's a lot of disposables now. We're doing recycling and we're reducing that. But with the corona pandemic, there's more waste now building up than before the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's also an obstacle in creating a circular economy right now. I also want to talk about something else, not only resources, recycling, and reuse, but of course it's the consumers that have to act on this, but more important is the production phase. We have to do the production so that we don't make one-time disposable items, and we make these items that are disposable or degradable in the earth. That's what we have to do in production. So a society that does not use plastic, a plastic-free city, or local communities, maybe gu districts in Korea, they can start that kind of movement, plastic-free. That can be an idea, I think. That's more important. We have to not use plastics. That's what I think is more important than how to dispose of it. And self-sufficiency. We talked about self-sufficient economy. Energy self-sufficiency especially we talked about. But you think that you have to change the energy source. You have to use new and renewable sources, not fossil fuels. You have to escape from nuclear energy, fossil fuels, and you have to use regenerative, renewable energy. But actually, and from supply side to demand side, you have to change all of that. And making this new kind of energy governance, of course, that's included as well. You have to do that, but there's more to energy transition that we need to do. And local community production, like we produce together, we make livelihood goods together, and we share that. We talked about that, and that's also very important, I think. That's an important element for circular economy. And also, COVID-19 has brought us about parenting, looking after children or other elderly people, the marginalized in society. You have to think about that too. In the local community, this kind of helper system, a job role can also be established as well around this. So that's something we have to address. Already, Soran talked about transition town a lot. I will not talk about that further, but these are some issues that we have to really address to make a circular economy. And then Ian had talked about the social system to make Seoul, let's say, a circular economy. In village or towns and the job system. You have to comprehensively make that kind of a circular system and have a system in place. Well, I talked about the town, and Seoul might be difficult as a whole, but in the municipalities within Seoul, the boroughs and the gu districts, I think we can do that little by little in small communities to make some kind of a transition community. That's where we have to start. And it starts with energy transition and changing our food stuff and how we supply food to ourselves. Well, we talk about Seoul a lot, but 68% of Seoul's energy is coming out from buildings. Buildings are the source of energy use. But when we talk about buildings, we look at the outsides, and we look at how to make windows so that the energy can be conserved and air can be conserved. But that's not it. It's not only about building materials and how to design buildings. It's about our culture. We use more and more household appliances, and we electrify ourselves. There's things where we don't need to use electricity for, but we use electricity anyway. That's where we have to change our lifestyle, our culture. That's how we can be energy efficient. And so these are some things that I just wanted to mention. And another thing for Seoul is 19%, 20% is transportation. That's where we use energy for transportation. Seoul City is leading this movement, though. From until 2035, combustion engines, we're going to restrict the registration of internal combustion engines. So only electric vehicles or hydrogen fuel vehicles will be able to be registered after 2035. But there's a missing element here. No matter how much electric vehicles, hydrogen we have, if there's a lot of cars on the road, we still are using energy. We have to change the culture of using vehicles itself. That's what has to change. We have to make public transportation or by foot kind of distances, a community where everything can be done by foot or by simple public transportation. That's the kind of system and community we have to build. And there's another important thing in Korea that's a hot topic. It's about energy bills, right? Energy. Instead of the cost of production of energy, we're using energy at a lower cost than the cost of production. If you do it that way, it doesn't work. Energy, electricity bill is so cheap that you cannot have people save energy. But still, at the ministries, there's still a lot of objection against increasing the energy bill. Let me talk about Green Deal a little bit, Green New Deal. Ian has said that they don't see social economy in the Green New Deal proposed by the government. But I think that we don't see the citizens involved. If you want a Green New Deal, you have to have a Green New Deal where citizens-led participation is involved. Citizens have to participate, or you cannot have the Green New Deal, because Green New Deal has to come from the community. That's why you need citizen participation in the Green New Deal. And it has to be community-based. That's what I want to emphasize, or you cannot have a Green New Deal. And let me talk about governance and networking at the end. So Jay Tom talked about networking and the importance of understanding networking and utilizing it, but what I want to say is that local governments built on this networking is important, because whether it's a transition town, a transition city, or energy transition, you need that networking between the citizens, the local government, and the various stakeholders and players. You need to make that cooperative, collaborative network. If you don't have that networking, then you cannot solve the fundamental issues that we face. And so to get this kind of governance vitalized, citizens have to be empowered. The civil society has to be empowered and has to be provide an environment to be deep-rooted. So the first presentation from Totnes, Jay Tomt. I want to ask a question to Jay Tomt. You talked a lot about networking and the importance of networking, but governance you did not really talk about a lot. What about Totnes? How do you think about the governments? Can you provide some examples around the governance system in Totnes? Yes, thank you very much. Energy transition movement is what you're involved in a lot these days. So that's why you talked a lot about how to do energy transition. And then you talked about a lot of things, points that we should not miss in the presentation. So you talked about specific examples and what that means. So it was very good, the points that you made for a circular economy and what kind of things we have to look out for moving forward. So you brought out a lot of very important points. Thank you for that discussion. Now, we listen to all the speakers and the panelists, and there's a lot of people that are doing transition movement that are participating online. I see a lot of people participating online, and so we had 3 presenters. We had 2 panel discussions just now, and there's a lot of people that have been viewing this. Can you see on the screen? Chun Jung-e is online right now. I can see, yes. Oh, there you are, Chun Jung-e. Is there anything that you would like to mention, or a question that you might have? Maybe you have a question. Is there anything you would like to say?
So you can actually direct your brief comments to either the speaker or the discussants. So I actually am working in the city of Gwacheon as part of a transition team, and I'm also the principal of a non-accredited school. I actually have 3 questions. First is about toughness.
So first one is about Totnes to J. Tomt. Now, a few years ago, I actually visited Totnes, and one of the impressions that I got very strongly is the re-economy project that you talked about today. That was very impressive to me. So my question is, in Totnes, in your towns, when you do transition, there's a lot of different projects, and there's a lot of events for people, for the citizens, and that stimulated me. That made me think a lot. And Schumacher College or other institutes, schools there, I remember that, and it was very impressive. But my question, what I'm curious about is the re-economy project now. I want to know about, like, in the past, you talked about local community support.
꿈꾸는 활동 실천 이게 대단히 인상에 남았었는데요.
So I remember the activities you did in the past, but now young people coming back to your community, that is what you talked about. I remember it's about bringing back the young people in the community, re-economy, and bringing back young people into the local community. How is it now? Like at the present, I'm kind of curious about. Yeah, that's my question anyway. At now, can you talk about what's happening now with that? And number 2 is to Lee Eun-ae.
So you talked about challenges, tasks to achieve the community-based circular economy. So I think there was a lot of broad analysis and strategies that you provided. Thank you for that slide. It provided a snapshot view. Now, you talked about the correlation with the Green New Deal. You said Seoul metropolitan government should declare a state of environment emergency and build up some kind of a consensus. That actually was quite noticeable. So this type of binding initiative, even if you have that, I think it has to be underlined by a change in people's thinking and awareness first. So life cycle-based community, for example, linkages with the Green New Deal actually stood out for me. But declaring a state of climate emergency to suggest that it's very severe and to then prompt this transition, you suggested just a large framework for what Seoul should do. So if you could elaborate, I would appreciate it. What exactly should SMG do? And for large cities across the world, I think the community-based transition model may be very difficult because it's such a big city. Maybe a different perspective. Do you have in mind trying to change or transition Seoul into a smaller community-based circular economy?
And Soran, nice to meet you here again. I'm trying to also model your transition town Eunpyeong movement, and I'm trying to do that myself. But when I look at Eunpyeong, there's basic needs that people have to live, like food, shelter, and clothing. But by changing relationships and changing the way we live, you're trying to solve all these issues of food, shelter, and clothing. But I think people have to change inside. That's how you can bring about true transition. People have to change first, their mindsets. But what I'm thinking is that climate emergency, of course, COVID-19 pandemic is the same, but climate crisis is very fast approaching. It's an emergency, in fact. But this is a very small movement. You know, you want to change people, you want to build relationships. That's what you're doing here, trying to build some collaborative models and cooperation. But it's a very small and simple way. Compared to the disaster in climate right now and its pace and the efforts that we're doing, like you mentioned, there's a lot of difference in the pace. So if we want to actively address climate change and stop it and move to a transition economy, more people have to participate. I think the whole society has to make movements now. Just in a village or a town, small efforts like that, can it really contribute? That's just something I'm questioning. So in this kind of a situation, when we do transition movement, transition towns to address climate change, I know you're contributing to circular economy, but what's the focus? Is there something in particular that you have to focus on to make impact? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So I think very detailed questions. It gives us a sense of the depth of his expertise as an actual practitioner working in the field. I think for these types of discussions, time is the biggest constraint. So let me first ask the Korean speakers to provide their answers first. And please do be brief and hit on the highlights. And then all the way from the UK, we have Mr. J. Tomt. It's probably very early in the morning over there, so we'd like to allocate more time to Mr. Tomt if possible. So, Ms. Soran?
Yes, transition town movement. I also thought about that. Climate change is big, but doing this little change, is it going to be meaningful? You know, I thought about that too, but it's still, I'm concerned about it. Yes, it's true. That's a thought that I have. But climate change is very big and it's very rapid. But if we don't change our everyday lives and the way we live, we cannot do anything. We have to start a change. We have to degrowth. And we have to change our direction. That's true. This is like a slogan, right? But like a big ideology. We don't have to think of it like that. Then the people who want to change are afraid to change. It's intimidating. So you have to start somewhere. Small change, you have to start it. And these examples you have to make. Then people will change accordingly. And those examples are the motto of Transition Town networking and trying to build this into more villages and towns around the world. And it'll spread. That's how we're going to get meaning out of it. It's going to be a meaningful movement once it gains traction. So that's why I think it has great meaning in what we're doing in terms of tackling all the problems.
And Ms. Iune, so to just answer everything in one, I think the community-based circular economy. So we are moving away from the old age where it was about excess and overuse. Everything was about scaling up, how to make our national economy bigger, different industries, communities. It was about scaling up, but now it's about scaling down. The essentials that we need, we should produce as a community, and then be loyal users of those products, and then build up this kind of healthy, self-sustained circular structure. That's about scaling down. And in your question, there might be, close-offedness. If there's self-serving interests only, this will not work. There has to be linkage or solidarity, say between the urban areas and the rural areas, and between one locality and another. So you're building up a circular economic structure based on your community, but then you link up with other communities, and then on a nationwide basis. It's about building up this kind of broad sharing network. We have the Green Fund, for example, and a lot of the large companies are committing big investments. So it's about, I think that also is showing the evolving trends nowadays. So it's about linkage and solidarity. And in that, we'll find sources of job creation for the youth. So it's about our community, our social enterprises in the community, and also the mom and pop stores, the citizens. I think we also should serve multiple functions, safeguarding the environment, producing to be an active member of the economy. I think not only the farming households, but even citizens living in the urban setting should become multifunctioning actors. And Seoul, the Seoul Economic Democracy Council has declared this as an important agenda item for next year. And so they're also adopting a top or bottom up approach. And at 5, I think Mr. Seoul from SMG may be able to provide further details about the city plans later today at 5 p.m.
Yes, Jay Tomt, now it's your turn to give an answer. There's a lot of people from Korea that have visited Totnes, and it was very nice to see you and your presentation. So please say hello to them while giving a response.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is quite early here in Totnes. It's about 2:30 in the morning, but I'm really happy to be here. We have had many visitors from Korea over the years, and I might have met a couple of you before. I've been to Korea a couple of years ago. I went to Jeonju for the Economics of Happiness conference, and I have a lot of fondness for the food and your culture, and I'd like to come back someday. It's been really nice to be here with you and to listen to what's been said already. There have been a lot of things said that I would agree with, that I think are principles that would easily transfer to the UK or to Europe or to the United States. And many people are working on these issues. I think one of the questions was about building networks and governance. And this is super important, whether you're talking about building community or trying to spread the social innovations and these kinds of economic innovations. It's super important. And these very often are informal networks. Sometimes it's in the form of networking, as that may conjure some images of smarmy business people in suits trading business cards and stuff like that. But the kind of thing that we're talking about really is relationships. And I think this is the basis for citizenship. It's the basis for good community. And the governance that typically comes along with the kinds of projects that we're working in, whether it's building networks or developing other collaborations or simply initiating things from our own organizations, is we tend to operate by consensus and have very flat kinds of governance structures. At the moment, there's a lot of things happening. There are a lot of things in motion in our region, and especially with local governments. And some of this has to do with the climate change declarations and the general awareness that we do have to really accelerate the kinds of changes that are required. Austerity. So our local governments have not had appropriate funding. COVID has shown how fragile our system is. So our local economy, but also the National Health Service and other aspects of our society, the fragility of these systems became apparent. So what that has done is created the conditions for people within local government to look around with new eyes and understand that they need to do things differently if they're going to be effective. And so they're more willing to work with people in the community, more willing to work with social enterprises and social enterprise networks. I know that you had Kate Rayworth here for the conference. There's a donut economics initiative happening here, and many people in local government are interested in donut economics now. They may not understand what it is, but they're interested in change. And so this is a very positive development. And I think working in this way, working in a networked, relationship-based way takes some skill, takes a lot of listening, knowing how to communicate with people in different circumstances. So in a way, becoming multilingual, and showing empathy. And I think these are the kinds of things that have been talked about in transition for a long time, and there are things that work here. Now, I also had a question about what's happening now in Totnes. We have achieved utopia. No, that was just a joke. Just a joke. But one of the things that has happened in our town and in our region is that the sort of transition ethos has kind of spread around. So more people are active citizens. So during the pandemic, lots of people sprung into action. There are many mutual aid networks across Britain, actually. And I think transition may have played some part in trying to, creating the conditions for that kind of thing to happen. We still have a U-shaped demographic. We still have young people who are leaving town for university. We're still working on that. And we just launched a new project during the pandemic called Alt Work, where we've been trying to build a network of young people, connect them with young entrepreneurs, connect them with other young social enterprises, and try to work in this same way, but really focus on young people. And what we've discovered is that there aren't a lot of networks and ways for young people to connect in this way. So we're thinking about it in terms of how can we attract and bring young people into the regenerative economy and give them some leadership roles and kind of push them to the front of the movement. So that's what's been happening here in Totnes for the last year.
예, 고맙습니다. 아마도 토트네스의 얘기.
Thank you very much. There were a lot of people that want to hear more about Totnes, but we don't have time for any additional questions, so it's very sad that we have run out of time. Time is always a problem in these events. We don't have enough. But Seoul City knows about the topic of transition, and Seoul is a government that knows transition must be at the forefront. Well, next time, I think if we have more time for questions, we can discuss more, and this could be a better forum to discuss with citizens. So that's a little bit disappointing that we don't have enough time for more discussions, but we have to end here. But once again, the message that we want to share is right now, we cannot continue the path we're on. That's the reality. It's a disaster. How can we change this disaster then? That's what we were talking about. And this morning session talked about circular economy being a solution for sustainable development. We looked at many examples as well. So we saw 3 stories presented, and then there were discussants. So a total of 6 people shared their message talking about what they have been doing. It seems small, but this is fundamental change. These are efforts that can make fundamental change. And these references, these examples will inspire. Next is how we can expand it, how we can spread it, what kind of networking we need, what kind of governance we need, how we have to approach it moving forward. Now that's the point of discussion that we have to continuously think about. Now, for me, I'm from ICLEI, and ICLEI is a local government for sustainability, and we talk about sustainable cities. That's our main theme. So at ICLEI, how to make sustainable cities, sustainable development is a very important issue, and we also believe circular economy is a key ingredient. So that's why when we talk about these efforts, and at our global network of ICLEI, what we say is that the sustainability crisis that we're facing globally, the way to solve this is to think of our house, think of our alleyway in front of our house, think of where we live. That's the heart. That's what has to change. So our livelihood, our lifestyle in our life, everyday life has to change. If we don't act in our immediate life territory, then we cannot achieve change. So every community that wants transition, through the 20 years of experience from transition towns and transition movement, this is what we learn. Local communities change the world. And that's the value that I have in my heart and want to share with you. We talked about a lot of different cases, and we talked about connections, and there are some weak connections that we have to work on, but we have to work on all of this. We have to collect our wisdom to bring about change, and that's what this session was about. I hope it contributed. It's not even 3 o'clock in the morning yet in the UK. It's 2:30, he said. But thank you very much for participating at that early hour, Jay, from Re-Economy Project. And there's other people participating from online in Korea and abroad. Thank you very much for your participation, all the discussants here too. I know you did not have enough time to discuss and ask questions, but there's a lot of audience on YouTube as well. Thank you very much for your participation. And this is all for our society to become more healthy and transition to a sustainable society. Your wisdom, all of our wisdom together, collectively will help contribute to that. So with that, I would like to conclude this session. Thank you all for your participation. And one more thing that I want to add as a message is the Seoul 2020, Seoul Innovation Week. This is not the end. In the afternoon, we have more. The citizens of Seoul will speak, and there's more participatory sessions in the following this. So after lunch break, I urge you to also participate actively in the other sessions. So thank you very much. Thank you. This is the end of this session.